pre-qualification for the head of state. The election came about because, as you all know, right, prior to 1993, the president was elected by parliament. Okay, so some people call it appointed. Technically, parliament goes through an election process to elect the and of course, in 1991, they changed it to an elected system because I think that was Lee Kuan Yew's biggest nightmare. The idea that if the government goes rogue, right, that's the word he used, and they can do it through crony appointments, nepotistic government. They could raid the reserves, and his position, is that Singapore will collapse fairly quickly. And so one way is the way I look at it is that the elected president is like a speed bump. And so a government that could be traveling very dangerously fast to disaster, right? There are these speed bumps that perhaps might slow down. And so the president's powers are fairly limited, right? The president is not, our system remains a parliamentary system of government, right? The cabinet led by the prime minister sets policies, carries them out. The president's main powers are what they call the custodial powers, right? And so they relate to key public sector appointments, like the Chief Justice, the Judge of the Supreme Court, the Chief of Defence Force, the Auditor General, Accountant General, Director of CPIB, and as well as the use of our past national reserve. Right? So a government who wants to use the past national reserves will have to get the concurrence of the president, right? And this is what they use the term to help you understand the second key, right? I like to joke that our use of reserves is 2 keys only, right? You go to UBS, you got 3 keys, right? At least the logo. And the president, in carrying out his or her duties, is advised by a council of presidential advisors, right? Which is comprised of people that are appointed by the Prime Minister, people appointed by the President himself or herself, and people appointed by the Chief Justice. So I may have forgotten. So now we know that Mr. Thurman has indicated interest, but he can't campaign yet because he's still in the government. Right? He hasn't resigned from the government. He's given the date as somewhere in July.
The 17th.
Right, the 7th, I think.
7th.
And we know that Mr. George Goh, went to pick up the forms, and then there was this former teacher, Mr. Singh, I think Mr. Singh doesn't understand the system well enough, but he felt that he
it's a comic relief.
Yes, sometimes these things do happen. I don't know whether so it's just a very broad overview. So the criteria so the PEC will, to run in the elections, you must get a certificate of eligibility, COE, right? So to own car, you need a certificate of entitlement, right? This is a certificate of eligibility, and you can qualify under two main routes, right? You can either be the public sector route, where certain offices that you have held for at least 3 years would automatically qualify you to run. Right? So there will be positions like the Chief Justice, the Speaker of Parliament, Cabinet Minister.
Ambassador?
Ambassador, no. Right?
Civil service, the Chief of the Civil Service, that rank, really big.
Sorry, it just stepped my mind.
That's the word, step what? Chief of Staff.
No, right? So the Constitution here says Minister, Chief Justice, Speaker, Attorney General, Chairman of the Public Service Commission, Auditor General, Accountant General, or Permanent Secretary. But if you serve 3 or more years as Chief Executive of an entity specified in the fifth schedule, I didn't read the 5th schedule, but I believe you cover things like JTC, some of the larger statutory boards, right? But if you don't qualify automatically, right, then you go under what is called a deliberative track, right? So this is where you are asking the PEC to take into account your whole record, and to say that you have the experience and ability that is comparable to someone who will qualify automatically, right? So that applies to both the public and private sector. So I've covered the public sector, right?
Before you finish off, will Tama qualify?
Oh yeah,
Why will he qualify?
Mr. Tama will qualify automatically because he has held office for a period of three or more years as minister.
Will Ho Ching qualify?
Ho Ching, I don't have. I need to look it up. I don't know whether Temasek is one of the fifth schedule company.
Looks like yes.
Constitution. Fifth schedule of the Constitution. Maybe Assoc can help me there. Yeah. So I don't know about Madam Ho. Right? So under the private.
But he has some criminal record, right?
Who?
Taman.
No, the offense
criminal.
under the Official Secrets Act is not a criminal offense. Maybe Assoc can.
Yeah, he correct. But the fact that he has been hauled into the court of law, found guilty, and penalized, then I think should suffice that he has been convicted. Full stop.
And then it's
He was
official
fine.
secrets act.
He was fine, but he was not penalized. He himself
Yeah.
declared that he is not
pass the mic to him.
that he is not he himself declared that he is not committed any crime. So they checked everything. They only find him.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, it was just it was careless. He exposed some document to someone. Yeah, it wasn't a deliberate act of compromising. Yeah. So I don't think that there's any issue because if there was an issue, he couldn't have become minister in the first place if he has a criminal record. So under the private sector route, it's quite clear. You need to run a private sector organization that is worth $500 million. Right? So they use the term shareholder equity, and you need to run it for 3 years, and in at least 3 years, and in the years that you run, the company must have been profitable after tax. Now, if you satisfy this, you will automatically qualify under the private sector route. But if you don't, you can go under the deliberative track. Right? So then you try and say that all these companies that I've run, and that they have provided me with the experience and ability that is comparable to someone who has automatically qualified.
Now, allow me to pose this question.
Sorry, just before you answer, fifth schedule, Temasek Holdings Private Limited.
Yeah. Assoc. So the fifth schedule companies, right? So if you are the chief executive of these entities, you can also automatically qualify, right? CPF, HDB, JTC, MAS, GIC, and Temasek.
To qualify.
So I think the Minister for Public Service, in charge of public service, Chan Chun Sing, when in response to a question by NCMP Yong Man Wai, the reply was that there are 50 public. I don't know why he used the word 50 public sector appointments, unless he count each minister as one separate appointment, each different minister. Yeah. So he said there are 50 public sector appointments, and there are about 1,200 companies that meet the 500 million mark. Right, but I thought the MP should ask further, of these 1,200 companies, how many are run by Singaporeans?
Now, my question is that ever since Ong Teng Cheong came onto the scene and stirred some issues, right? I think the government has been very, very afraid. Why? Because they set the rules. First 50 million so on and so forth. Then it increased to 500 million. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier before we started this, Singapore is the only country in the world that sets such ridiculous requirements. I mean, take for example the US. Even an actor also can become president, right? But having said that, you have the Council of Presidential Advisors. So does it mean that a CEO of a $50 million company cannot become president? Can. It should be the case because he would have some form of financial expertise, right, to be able to run, conduct his role. And even then, if he possibly makes a decision and the Council of Presidential Advisors think it's wrong, they can still advise him. As in all countries, you have got a group of advisors to advise the PM or the president, right?
No, I mean that's certainly a sentiment that people do have. But I suppose the word I would use is institutional designers, right? They have decided that this is something that works best for Singapore. And if you recall, right, before when they raised the limit from 100 million market cap, there was a previous CEO of a company with CEO or chairman of a company with 100 million market capitalization. They increased it to just CEO but not chairman of a $500 million company, 500 million measured in terms of shareholder equity. There was a constitutional commission that was headed by the Chief Justice, to look into how the requirements of the presidency should be adjusted, right? And the Constitutional Commission issued a very detailed report, and they explained why they had increased it, let's say like fivefold, and they drew parallel to the fact that the reserves have grown significantly, right, since 1991, right? So I think in the end it is legitimate for people to disagree, right, and say that the requirements are too stringent, but as I always tell my students, you are entitled to your views, but what is important is that you also understand what was the official reason given. Now, you don't have to accept it, but because these are issues in which reasonable people can disagree, So I'm not here to say whether it is right or wrong, but I think that there was a very deliberate process by which the government decided that they want to raise it to 500 million. But of course, raising it to that limit means that the pool of people who would qualify would obviously be smaller, right? I mean, there is no doubt about that.
The consequence of that division shrinks the market.
Correct, but the commission itself took the position that, if I recall correctly, because I raised this because I was invited to testify, and I testified before the committee. I think in the report they mentioned that there were about 1,600 people, that would meet in 2016. They would meet this $500 million criteria. Yeah.
A quick question then. Obviously, financial acumen is very, very important, and I don't think any of us would disagree with that. So, arguing a level, okay, we can have a discussion about that. When you take that back over to the public sector, though, I mean, if we just look at our last president, her own admitted financial experience was like helping her mother in a coffee shop or something. I mean, she really does not have a financial background. Now, yes, she held the role of Speaker of the House, and others have done, but do they have financial acumen to do those financial things? So there should not be a similar, like maybe only finance ministers or people who are of organisations that can make those sorts of decisions or analyse those sorts of problems.
No, I wouldn't disagree with you that the eligibility criteria would lean in favour of the public sector, people seeking qualification under the public sector, right? And again, I think it is a fair criticism, but that's what we have. right? Yeah, I accept this is a fair point, but it is clear that the institutional designers, the government, right, have designed it in a way that the criteria leans in favor of those coming under the public sector track.
I wish you say something.
Yeah, sorry, I have some other question. As if the $500 million is not enough. Now, I mean, there's also the issue of race. You know, certain presidential seasons, they say only Malay can be president. Also, only Indian can be. I mean, to me, it's very ridiculous because today I still do not know if Halima is Indian or Malay. I really do not know that. And then there was the issue of Tan Cheng Bock. I think he had a judicial review that was basically dismissed by the apex court. You know, so I guess I'm just speaking as a person on the street. I don't know that much things about law or whatever, but there's all these things that make us think that do we even have a choice now to even choose a president? You know, and then to me, actually, the president, the most important thing, it should be non-partisan. But then how come Taman, who is still a minister, still in PAP, right up to a few months before he became a president, is allowed to even be a president? Shouldn't, if you're going to have fair rules, then definitely for public sector, you want somebody who is basically not in any kind of party for a while, not like you know, basically, and then you just say that you're going to be objective. Why should I believe you? I mean, just
well, I suppose people will point to Ong Teng Cheong as an example, right? You know, he resigned as deputy prime minister to contest in the presidential election, and people lionize him, you know, as someone who stood up against the government. Personally, I feel that we should look beyond labels. You know, that we should judge a person based on his or her track record. And we mustn't forget, right, the person elected will have to take an oath of office. And so it's really for voters to decide, right? This person, Mr. Tharman, has very close PAP connect. I mean, he's a PAP man. Can we trust him to do the job of the president, right? And so it is for each voter, you know, to decide. But I want to quickly take your other point about the reserve presidential election. The Constitutional Commission, you know, analyzing the history of the office, concluded that, you know, the presidency is a symbol of national unity. And so they felt that it was important to have, you know, the races regularly represented, you know, because if a particular race is not represented, right, then the question of, you know, whether Singapore is truly multiracial, and so they came with this mechanism, right, the reserve election mechanism, and it essentially it means that if you have 5 terms of the presidency without a particular race being elected to the office, then the next election will be for that particular race, right? So 5 terms works out to 30 years because each term is 6 years, right? So the next, assuming that no Malay is elected between now and later on, right? The next reserve presidential election for the Malay community will be sometime in the late 2030s, right? So I think this is where, and bear in mind, in a reserve election, the applicants are subjected to the same eligibility requirement, right? So it's not lowered, right? You know, it's still 500 million. You know, you're coming from the private sector. You still need to have serve in certain offices. You're coming from the public sector. Now, again, we can disagree on whether it should be 5 terms or it should be 3 or it should be 7. You know, but I think it's important that I feel personally, right, someone who also does research on ethnic relations, I think it's important to have this system of the major races being regularly represented. In the past we could, right, because Parliament could, the candidate put forth, you know, was very deliberate, right? So we started with a Malay, then we had a Eurasian in Benjamin Shears, then we moved to an Indian, in Devon Nair, then a Chinese in Kim Wee, right? But once you switch to a elected presidency, right, you cannot have this sort of regular rotation, right? And so the president, the Constitutional Commission recommended this, what they call a hiatus triggered model, right? So in 30 years, if a particular race is not represented, then the next election will be reserved for that particular race.
So shouldn't the next election be federation?
The Eurasians come under Indian and other minorities. Yeah.
That's the question I have to ask.
Yes, being a Eurasian, yes.
Right? So why are we still under others when it's 1991?
Okay.
I'm just trying to say now, if you want to be fair, 30 years we actually, number one, it's our turn. Number two, show me one Eurasian who's able to meet that criteria.
Okay. Okay,
So why have this democracy in itself a slap in the face for the Eurasians? Ho Chang Tong himself, before 1991 August, he said, can they allow us to be known as Eurasians? They were back to others. Let's put things in proper context. So if we are going to talk about this 30-year cycle and booster this next, and you make a criteria which you have been lifting up, something is
Victor, use the mic, Victor.
sorry.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do this, you have to adjust the criteria. Now, if it's a turn for the Eurasians, none of us can meet the high 500 million thing. So what do? We become under Indians and Malays and what? And then why are we a self-help group? Why are we one of the four races? I think this is something perhaps I'd like to feedback to whoever is here.
But not only that, why is the PM always Chinese? I mean, if you are using that logic, right, that should also extend to the Prime Minister. It's ridiculous to me, it's ridiculous. They are just trying to put somebody there at the expense of
double standards.
Good. It's always at the expense of the opposition coming in and afraid that you'll be another Ong Teng Cheong. Sorry, a lot of us think that way.
No, fair enough, right? But to be fair, I don't think the government needs to worry about another Ong Teng Cheong, simply because the powers of the elected president are rather specific, right? About why no Chinese prime minister, I think in the end, again, I'm not here to defend, it's not my business to defend the government. I think hopefully social attitudes will change, right? Because there are regular surveys done by Institute of Policy Studies at NUS, and they still consistently show that all things being equal, a Chinese voter would generally prefer a Chinese prime minister. All things being equal, right? And I think that's a credit to Singapore, right? Singaporeans, right? Because it means that if we think that someone else of a different race is better, Singaporeans are prepared to vote for that person. Right? Of course, we don't vote directly for someone to be prime minister. So hopefully social attitudes will change. Now, I know where you're coming from, Victor. I mean, my mom's Eurasian, right? So I'm half Eurasian, right? Although I don't look at it all, but the family name is Marcus, right? Or what in Singapore we call Marcus, right? So all the way back to Portugal and all. So I suppose it's a question of, if you, again, I'm just second guessing, right? If you say that we will have specific consideration for the Eurasians, then the question is, okay, should there be special consideration for the Sikh? Right? Should there be special consideration for the Peranakans? Again, I suppose if you're an institutional designer, you have to draw the line somewhere, and I certainly hope that with time, we will all remove this question of what race you're from, right? Because You know, but it's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be easy. But there's hope. I mean, look at the younger generation. Right? They seem to be a lot more race blind, than. I mean, you can ask yourself, right? You know, imagine, if you don't ask about your children, right? Imagine when you were in your 20s, right? And you tell your parents that you're going to marry someone from a different race, a different religion, right? Just imagine, put your mind back, ask yourself, what your parents' reaction would have been. Right? And I think for most parents, there would be some concern, not because they're racist, right? But because they might be concerned that with different cultural, religious backgrounds, to make the marriage work, will require a lot more effort. And I know it, right? Because I saw how my parents had to deal with it. So I'm fully conscious of it.
Mine is just one sentence, or just one sentence. Mine is just one sentence. Nationhood is still a work in progress.
Eugene, if I may, I actually organized a petition in the year of the first reserve presidency. I said that race should not be an issue for choosing the president, because the reason is that in Malaysia there's a lot of racial politics. I think all of us are aware of this, and it's a slippery slope if we want to bring race into the highest office in there. So 285 people signed a petition, including Dr. Paul Tambaya, and then our Nala, following my petition, also raised the same petition. He got over 1,000 signatures. I think you know about that. So yeah, so I think what I'm trying to say is that most Singaporeans, we value fairness above all. I think we want to see that the government is fair in applying policies. Now it seems that even though Mr. Taman has said that the president is apolitical, come on, I mean, the presidential office cannot be said to be apolitical. In a way, it is political.
Yeah. No, I mean, to be fair to him, I don't think he has used the word apolitical. Right? I think he has used the word non-partisan. I think he's a smart person like him. I think he's fully alive to the fact that the presidency plays a political role, right? But in a non-partisan manner. I know in here some might say it's semantics, but I think that there is a difference between being apolitical and non-partisan.
Can I ask, why is it sometimes elected or appointed president? Like, who makes the decision? Like, now we let the public elect, or now we are going to appoint someone. Can you elaborate?
No, I think when Singapore decided to switch to elected presidency, the thinking was that to give the elected president that moral authority, that legitimacy, to stand up against the government of the day, an elected president would work better, right? Because if you give the president custodial powers, right, like what it has now, right, but Parliament appoints that president, I think many people will say, like, look, this is Kelong, right? So they decide. Why is what happening? No, she was elected.
Elected unopposed.
That year was like must be Malay, but then in the end, is she Malay or is she Indian?
No, but to be fair, you must look at the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't say that, for Chinese, Malay or Indian, right? It doesn't say that it goes by your IC. Right?
It goes by what?
It goes by whether you regard yourself as a Malay and whether the Malay community regards you as one of them. If you can show that you regard yourself as a Malay and that the community accepts you as a Malay. So I'm not sure you can satisfy the second one.
Then why even bother asking for the IC? When you can just be anything, why did she even put as an IC as Indian?
Well, okay, maybe we won't go into the race. But
Can I add some points to
She is a Malay. So he is eligible for 300 million. That's all. 12 billion. No need to talk.
Alright, can I make 2 points to the conversation? First point is that sometimes you better be careful what you wish for because you might just get it. Now, going back to the history of the elected presidency, as you pointed out earlier, Lee Kuan Yew wanted somebody directly elected so that he would have the person would have the moral authority to be a check on the government. And there was a lot of speculation at that time that Lee Kuan Yew envisaged this post for himself. But of course he didn't.
He doesn't get post.
It didn't come across. But I think in Ong Teck Cheong he got what he wished for and more, is that he got actually somebody who actually was checking on the government. And that really scared the shit out of them. Now, which brings me to the second point. Alex, myself, and a few of the people in this room have been involved in presidential elections since 2011. And now, I've seen the elasticity of the thing. Until I say that I'm a car dealer by profession. So, that there's more elasticity in the rules than we have in our car tires or in our inner tubes. Now, let's take the first time around. We really don't wonder how, we are really scratching our head on how time we save COE. He got the COE, right? He got it, and so he came in and the vote was split. The second time around was 2017. We went to the court and many times, Alex, myself, Logan, we were there listening to the appeals, and Tan Cheng Hock did not get his appeal, did not succeed to stand for election. So we had 2 election candidates who were also Malays, Farid Khan and
Marikan.
So that was bona fide Malays ready to stand against Halima. Now, here we had a ready-made electioneering machinery ready to go. And the candidate
One eligible.
It would have been possible, it would take as much stretch of the imagination to switch this machinery to another candidate. And there was some discussion about doing that. Suddenly, to our horror, the other 2 candidates were disqualified. So, I don't know how you feel about that, what that tells you. You can read, you can speculate, or you can think what you like.
Well, if I recall correctly, the challenge brought by Dr. Tan Cheng Hock, was not really about his candidacy. Right? I think he was questioning whether the 2017 election should be a reserve election, right? And so they, the court looked at the Constitution and the Presidential Election Act, and determined that the counting started from Wee Kim Wee, because Wee Kim Wee, although he was unelected, had exercised the powers of the elected president. The 2017, right? I think the 2 Malay gentlemen unfortunately did not meet the criteria. They didn't qualify automatically because they didn't run any company that was 500 million in shareholder equity. And so they tried to go under the deliberative track, to say that look at all these companies I've run, that consider whether it has provided me with comparable experience and ability. And the PEC, took the position that they didn't. To be fair to the PEC, right? The PEC, as I understand, gives detailed reasons to the unsuccessful applicants. It is for the unsuccessful applicants to then decide whether they want to make the reasons public. The PEC gives very generic reasons, right? Because some of the some of the reasons can be very damaging if they are in public, you know. So the PEC respects the
Let
applicants.
me just clarify that. So the PEC gives a very specific answer to the candidate, but it does not give that specific answer to the public.
It goes because generic.
Because they turn it into a generic statement because to protect the reputation or whatever of the candidate. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a very much more precise evaluation, but that is not made public.
Yeah, it is for the unsuccessful applicant to decide whether he or she wants to make it public, right? And again, you know, we respect the decision of the unsuccessful applicants, you know, if they decide not to make it public. I'm of the view that they should that the PEC should make public whatever they give to the unsuccessful applicant, because you have a person who's saying, I want to be your president, right? And
no skeletons.
And I think, you know, no one should hide, and that's why I feel Mr. George Goh must be more open, right? So he gave a statement yesterday to say that I'm not going to say anything more about my eligibility. You know, it's between me and the PEC. You know, which I think for someone running the highest office, there must be more candor, there must be more openness.
Then can we talk about Tan Ji say? How on earth did he qualify?
Okay, if I recall correctly, Tan Ji say, you know, so in 2011, right, 3 persons qualified automatically, right? Tony Tan, Tan Cheng Bok, and Tan Tin Lian, because NTUC income had more than $1 billion, you know, in terms of its assets and all. But Tan Ji say qualify under the deliberative truth route, right? The argument, so the PC accepted his case, you know, that all the funds he administered, you know, while running an investment fund, provided him with, you know, experience and ability that was comparable to someone who had qualified automatically in the private sector.
So going by.
So can you clarify for us in the deliberative route, what are the specific aspects of the deliberation that will be taken into account?
What do you mean by the specific aspects of the deliberation?
The deliberative route must have some specific benchmarks, right?
Correct.
So what are these?
Yeah, so the benchmark is quite simple, right? And I've used that a few times, right? It is the experience and ability that is comparable to the experience and ability of a person who has served as a CEO of a big company with at least the minimum amount of shareholder equity. So that's the criteria. So the PEC has discretion, but it's not an unfettered discretion, right? Because the Constitution says to exercise the discretion, you know, the PEC must be satisfied, right? That the person has experience and ability that is comparable.
So the operative word is comparable, and that is purely a judgment called by the PEC.
Correct.
Right.
So,
and it could be accurate or inaccurate.
And what do you mean by accurate or inaccurate?
It could be biased.
I think King Soon, what you meant the word to be subjective.
No, any judgment, of course, all judgments are subjective. But subjective in which direction?
Biased.
Right? In the direction of the candidate or in the direction of some other direction?
I think to be fair to the PEC, so who makes up the PEC, right? So it's headed by the chairman of the Public Service Commission. There are 2 Supreme Court judges. This time it's Justice Quentin Loh and Justice Kanan Ramesh or Ramesh Kanan. Yeah. And Professor Chan Heng Chi is. These are not randomly, because the Constitution provides that the PEC, that people holding specific roles will be appointed to the PEC. Right? So Chan Heng Chi is the representative from the Council, Presidential Council for Minority Rights. There is a specified position, chairman of ACRA, the Accounting Corporate and Regulatory Body, right? Yeah, authority, right? So that authority is needed because they they would have access to information about the different companies, public or private. And the Chief Justice appoints one Supreme Court judge. But there are two, because the other one, I think, comes from the Prime Minister, right? The assessment of who can add to the deliberation. Then there's one more, Mr. Chua Tiang Po, who is appointed under the provision that provides for a past or existing member of the Council of Presidential Advisors. And I suppose that is I think the idea there is that someone who has served or is serving on the CPA, the Council of Presidential Advisors, would have a good understanding of what the president does with respect to his or her custodial powers.
Professor, I have a question. So, do you happen to know if the PEC makes a decision on candidates based on simple majority or it has to be unanimous?
No, the Constitution provides that the PEC, I don't have it here, I didn't print it, but the Constitution provides in Article 18, that the PEC can set up its own rules, including the quorum, right? So each time a new PEC is constituted, they will have set up the ground rules. And so we don't know whether it's unanimity or simple majority or a super majority.
Yeah, the reason why I asked is because there are only 2 members of the judiciary. So that's why I think the rest are appointed by the executive. They are all government servants.
Not true, right? Because Mr. Chua is, yes, I mean, people see him as very much closely aligned with the government. But unfortunately, in a small country, like Singapore, where the government is very dominant, I think there are very few facets of life where, the government's hand, in the end, except for most of us here, right, everyone else will almost be like Chingu Lam.
Why can't elected opposition members be excluded on this body? Why are they excluded? Why is Pritam Singh excluded?
Well, I mean, the leader opposition role came in only in 2020, right? So
No. In the constitution of the PEC, why are non-government people not put onto this?
Well, I suppose in the end, if
I think the answer is quite clear to everyone.
No, correct. I mean, if the Workers' Party was in power, and they had a chance to redesign the PEC, I'm quite sure they wouldn't put provision for an opposition member to be on it. I think that's how we all know how power works, and we shouldn't pretend that that the WP will
I think it's important for the public to know that the PEC is constituted by the government, so that everybody is clear.
Well, it's going by government because yes, the executive appoints 1 or 2 members, the Chief Justice appoints 1 member, the Prime Minister appoints 1 member, right? And the others are by virtue of the office that they hold. Although yes, of course, I mean, the reality is that when you trace where power originates, right, in any country, right, you will trace it to the government of the day. I think we can be brutally honest about that.
Yes, of course, governments will do what they do, but they run the risk of loss of moral authority. This is the point.
Yeah, but I think in the end, no one. Yeah, okay. I don't think I need to.
Yeah, sorry.
Let us interrupt. The decision of the committee must be made by a majority of its members present and voting.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for that.
So simple majority. Right? So if there's any dispute.
Okay. My learned student.
No. Just reading the Constitution.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope I'll just make my question quick. This is regarding the 1,200 companies and this 1,600 that you mentioned. It's been valid. I mean, this is the official line that there is 1,200 companies and 1,600 people eligible to run under this private sector track. So I'm a bit curious of these numbers because I'm not very sure where these people are. Because if you look at the biggest local companies, or not, I mean, a number of them are on NGX, on the Singapore Exchange. There are about 640 companies on the main board, and about there are a few companies on the catalyst performance as that, but they probably won't have the 500 million shareholder equity. So out of the 640, I did a quick research. I hope my research is correct, but it shows that about 90% of them at least do not have this 500 million shareholder equity. So that is only very few. So I'm not sure where are actually these 1,200 companies and 1,600 people. I'm not sure whether Professor will shed some light on that.
So bear in mind, the 500 million equity doesn't mean that they have to be publicly listed. So they can be private companies. And you must remember, so it doesn't only refer to the current CEO. It could refer to, the number will probably include past CEOs who are still within the validity period. So you must have held this position, the look back, they call it the look back period is 20 years. So if you're a CEO born in 20 years ago, then you don't qualify. Right? So I think that's how the numbers all add up. Yeah, and the answer was not very clear if you ask me. It's a pity the MPs did not seek further clarification. No, but again, putting aside the numbers, right? Of course, you only need two to tango. Right? You only need two, right? But the reality is, if you're very successful in the private sector, right? You earn a couple of $1 million a year. You must feel that sense of compulsion to run, right? Because when you take public office, your life is scrutinized, right? So as George Goh is now experiencing it, and likewise, Mr. Tharman's life and family will also be scrutinized. Right? So if you are very comfortable in how you spend, how you live, right? So if you are very successful, I think people will say, even though I'm eligible, do I really want to do it?
Return back to society.
Well, but unfortunately, if you look at, I can tell you, many people who are successul may not share that same view. You can just go by the IRAA, right? For the amount of donations they give each year, and I think that will be quite revealing. You can earn a couple of millions, but you'll be donating about $300 to charity.
I think we got a question from
Gentlemen,
okay, sorry. I want to go back to what I thought this session was about. So I suppose two questions. First is, looking at what you've written so far, you seem to doubt that George Goh would get this eligibility, certificate of eligibility. I honestly don't know, because I do know some of his businesses, and one they included a company that was sold for like over $1 billion. He was listed as a co-founder, but he wasn't a CEO. And if I remember correctly, this company wasn't like profitable. It's the old days, you build a nice business, you don't need to make money, but you make it look nice, someone will buy it for a higher price. So my first question is, why do you think there are serious doubts about George Goh being eligible? And the second question, which is related, by giving Tan Jee Say the green light, does this sort of set a precedence for future candidates? Because in the case of Tan Jee Say, I think the argument was, yes, I may not have managed a big company, but I managed funds in excess of, 100 million or 500 million at the time. So if that's the case, I can say that I'm a founder or CEO or chairman of companies that collectively are worth so much. Wouldn't this become like almost automatic based on this precedent of letting Tan Jee Say run?
So Kevin, I've written 3 pieces, right, on the presidential election this round, right? 1 in Straits Times and 2 in CNA commentary. I did not say that Mr. Goh is ineligible. I just take the view that I know he doesn't qualify automatically, right? And so he has come up to acknowledge that in the media statement yesterday. And I feel that, because people are all very excited, and I feel that he owes a duty to Singaporeans, to be more open about how he's going to make his case under the deliberative track, right? So that's where I'm coming from, right? I think I've been fairly careful in not coming to a conclusive view, right? Because I don't have the facts. He has been guarding his information very, very carefully, and he doesn't even want to tell, right? So he bandies about this figure, 3 billion market capitalization. Is he talking about, does 3 billion mean the companies that he currently owns? Or is he saying that, oh, the companies I invested in, if I add all, and they now are worth $3 billion. I mean, it's so open, but I feel that since you're running for this highest office, you owe a certain level of candor, openness with the voting public, right? And not to throw this eye-popping figures, just to, get people all excited, and because I'm concerned about the electoral process, and will people feel that, that if George Goh doesn't get a certificate, it's because, the PEC was deliberately trying to knock him off, right? I mean, the PEC doesn't have to do that, in my view. And about the Tan Jee Say point, again, right, I think again, I don't have the facts, right, because Mr. Tan didn't lay it out as well, right? But I suppose the PEC then took the view, right, that many of the investment funds he ran, right, were perhaps close to 100 million, right, and so concluded that he had the requisite experience and ability that was comparable. Now, let me put this very extreme point, right? If you run one $500 million company, right, it's completely different if you were to run 500 million $1 companies. Okay, the skill, the competence required to me would be vastly different, right? So I think you can't just add up. I know my teacher Kevin Tan said that you can add up, right? But I look at the Constitution, I must say I disagree with my teacher. Right?
Actually, if you run 500 million companies, $1
Chusan on top. Chusan.
Okay, Kevin, just 2 sentences.
Eugene, Kevin's my teacher.
Eugene.
What's my teacher?
Just 2 sentences. I like your $500 $1 company. So if I have 500 chop with the
500 million $1 company,
500 1 million. Sorry.
500 million $1 company.
$1 company.
Yeah.
500 million chop with your Yong Tau Fu in the whole of Singapore. Only 5 technically.
But by the way, I just want to ask, within me time, what is the elected power that he has actually exercised?
The elected president, the president before up to Wee Kim Wee, right, before he assumed elected president powers, were mainly ceremonial and what they call community, right? Ceremonial, receiving credentials from newly appointed ambassadors. The only discretion that the president had when they were appointed by Parliament was the appointment of the Prime Minister. But even then, right, the Constitution says that the president would appoint the Prime Minister, right, through the elected MP, who commands the confidence of the majority of MPs, right, which is typically the case. Means the leader of the party that wins the most number of seats in a general election.
Wait, but you didn't answer the question. What did we do? Sorry, what did we do?
But I answered his question as saying, what sort of powers the elected president has. So I'm saying that, beyond the constitution, the community and ceremonial roles, right, the only discretion that he had no custodial powers. He had nothing to say about the reserves, nothing to say about public sector appointments, nothing to say about investigations by the CPIB, detentions under the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act, the ISA. No role at all. But now with the elected president, he has certain powers.
Because they come from Wee Kim Wee, because then they say that it's a Wee Kim Wee exercise, something like that. Yeah, it's the power of an elected president. That's why they count on weekly. So I just want to know what is the power that is actually executed.
Oh, when you exercise powers, elected president, they are what the current president exercises.
But he didn't do anything. He didn't actually do it.
No, we don't know because the constitution came into effect already, so he had custodial powers. But anyway, I mean the point is, even if let's say 2017 was not a reserve election, Dr. Tan is ineligible to run.
Yeah, but because I think the Tanjung Bok challenge is counting, say
so my point is, even if let's say you count after week, Dr. Tan wouldn't be eligible to run because he wouldn't meet the $500 million criteria. The mic is coming through.
Because Dr. Tan, after when they talked about 500 million, his son is a financial analyst, and we went back and we did a lot of counting of all the conflicts in the product group and all that. And if you match them here and there and everywhere, we'll see that there might have been a possibility of pushing it up to 500 million.
Okay, I think the most important, it seems to me that the two most important roles of the president is unifying and there is non-partisan. And if these two are the guiding principles of how we think who a good president should be, then shouldn't the rules surrounding this, if you give people a chance to vote, then definitely you will achieve the result of unifying. But if you make the criteria too difficult, then definitely many people will not meet the goal, and then will have resulted in many walkover presidents, which in the end is not really unifying. And then the other thing is the fact that if the non-partisan part, and as we all know, the past few presidents, they were all, basically just ministers or even Speaker of the House and so forth. And this is already not fulfilling the two most important criteria of a president, which is unifying and non-partisan. So can we adjust, can we feedback and adjust the rules accordingly so that the people have a chance to vote?
Would you agree that there should be, if there is no election, there is no alternative candidate, then there should be a referendum?
Some countries have that, right? So we all know about the Turkish election, right? You must get a certain minimum threshold. If you don't, then it goes to the second round, right? I think the French system also has that. But again, institutionalized.
I mean more than that, right? I'm talking about a vote of confidence.
Yeah. So institutionalized.
So let's say nobody challenges Tama, and Tama automatically becomes president. Shouldn't there be then a vote of confidence? Whether
the rules
public vote of confidence.
Well, the rules don't provide for that.
Well, then I think we should make a point that it should.
So by that,
Logan, do you want to say something?
Sorry, there's I have a question for you.
Prof.
Wow.
Graduated.
It's all right. Let's assume that both the candidates, that we have an election, this presidential election, both of them get past the criteria and get to run, right? I'm looking ahead now, I'm going to ask you this question. Clearly the groundswell about Tharman is strong, right? But let me give you two scenarios. One scenario is one where someone gets 80 to 90% of the votes. Let's assume that, right? 80 to 90% of the votes. And the other candidate gets 10 or 20%. And the other one where Tharman gets 55% of the votes and the other candidate gets 45%, right? What does that say about Tharman? What does that say the voting public in Singapore?
That's a very good question, Asuka. I don't know. But I'm sure that, in a contest, someone like Mr. Tharman I don't think he'll hit 80-90%. You know, because in today's age, it's just not realistic in my view. He hits 55%, or let's say 51, 51-49. He's still the winner. He will still be made president. But I don't think it demonstrates that people don't trust him, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the elected president. Right? So Mr. Goh, for example, said, "Oh, you know, cost of living is too high. You know, I'm going to look into that." Unfortunately, the president has got no, you know, but sometimes candidates may want to take this sort of angle, and I mean, I've said before. I mean, in a radio interview, right? You know that presidential election is not like a general election, right? You know, if you ask me, it's almost like a battle of CVs, a battle of resumes. You know, who has a better set of resume, you know, that people can trust. Right? You won't have rallies and all that, right? You know, because what are you going to talk about? You can't talk about. You can't say, you know, I'm going to lower the cost of living. I'm going to shorten NS. You know, I'm not going to. We are going to send troops to Ukraine to support Ukraine. The president has got no powers in all those.
Yeah, he doesn't address any of those issues, right? So it's more about his capability as a custodian of the assets, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, the criteria that the Constitution has laid down sets a very high benchmark, and therefore it's a small group. 100,000, 200, let's say. Tomorrow there is a criteria that could be even 500 people, let's say, right? But increasingly I get this sense saying that there is a need to have an election. And therefore there is a second candidate that is thrown up. And the second candidate, in this instance even Mr. Goh, comes with a particular background, right? Of having been appointed as an ambassador, etc. and so on. Right? So that in itself tends to color the perception about an election that you need to have one to justify whoever gets elected. Right? Is this something that the establishment is trying to do in order to justify what we have built into the Constitution?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand your question, but I would say that I'm personally in favor of an election. Right? And Mr. Tharman is a seasoned campaigner. You know,
I think he's suggesting that this is a manufactured election.
No, I think that would be an insult to Mr. Goh. I don't think Mr. Goh is. I don't know. I've seen WhatsApp messages that say, you know that yeah, you know, they pick such a weak hopeful and Mr. Goh, you know, it's just to make Mr. Tharman look even better. I think that would be an insult to Mr. Goh and to us Singaporeans.
It's not to make Mr. Tharman look better, but it's to make the election look better.
That's right. So give legitimacy to the election.
No, you see, but I'm in favor of an election. Right? I think like all of us here, right? Because we all want to exercise our democratic.
Yeah, but I don't think we want a fake election, right?
I don't think you can engineer, except for the first one. I don't think you can really engineer an election to be.
Why can't we engineer?
Huh?
Why can't we engineer?
No, you see, in today's age, right? If you engineer, right, you undermine the winner, right? And secondly, right, if you put someone who qualifies, right? I mean, this person is not going to be stupid. Why would he be a stooge and just run in the election? What benefit does he or she get?
But EC doesn't need to give a reason, right?
But they do give reasons to the applicants.
To the applicant, but that's completely private. So my point is that it remains that way today. Therefore, it makes it easier to engineer, right? You see, within the 1,200, a majority of them are really public sector possible candidates. The majority of them, right? Ministers, one set of numbers. Sec, another set of numbers. So the majority are public sector potential candidates, right? Now, the establishment nominates a person. Then, because it appeals, as you said to you, that we have an election, which I think is nice to have, but if from the remaining candidates, a majority still remain public sector potential candidates, and the lack of privacy, lack of publicity around whether they qualify, don't qualify, the PEC's explanation for that, right, makes it easier to engineer.
I'm not sure I agree with you, Asuka, because my position, my view is that for all these men and women, right, they're not going to run election because Akum tells you to run, right? I think that does them a lot of disservice, and if they actually do what Akum tells them to do, then I think we're in a sad state. So,
sorry, I'd like to bring up the case of Mrs. Guan Kim Yao. Remember that one very well?
I said, except for the first one, there haven't been an engineered election in my
Well,
view.
you can call it what you like, but this was the most fantastic campaign I know of. It didn't have any brochures, it didn't have any posters, it didn't do any campaigning.
43%.
And it won 41%.
No, correct. So that's why I said, if Mr. Tharman wins by 61%, he still wins. And no, I don't think Mr. Tharman is going to get the sort of, if there's a contest, that he will get the sort of into the 70 area, right? Because people have quite different ideas about what the presidential is. Right? People bring different ideas as to, people see the presidential election the way that they do, right? And for me as an academic, I try to, in my writings, to try to tell people, what exactly is the role of the president, but my views don't really matter.
So just going to actually the point the gentleman was saying over there, depending on the percentage that Tharman gets, if they allow, because it sounds like it's up to the PEC whether there is a contest or not. Because of all, from the flavour of the conversation and their question as well, there could be protesting voting rather than deliberative voting. The whole process of what we've gone through over the last elected, not elected, appointed, etc., as now seems to have reduced the presidency to a popularity of the government role rather than should be a proper deliberative choice of who the president should be. So then obviously it moves into what you said earlier about we need to fix that in the ballot box politically. So just as a thought process, where would the government be on this with, do we want the contest, and then obviously Tharman wins, and hopefully wins with a certain amount, or do we not have a contest and then we take a political hit because we didn't allow a contest because we were afraid with the protest vote, etc., he may not get 51%. So, where does this all sit as far as demeaning the whole role of the presidency? And is there a point where we should just say, look, we just have to have an appointed one until we get to the point where we're comfortable that we believe it's an all and honest, open and clear process, and it isn't left to 6 people to decide whether we've got a contest who may be right.
No, I think those are excellent points. But now that we all have a vote, right, although it's rarely, out of 5 elections, we've only used it twice. You can't take the vote away. I don't think any government is going to take the vote away, the ability to vote in a presidential election. I think the biggest challenge for Singapore is, how can we encourage eligible people to step forward, right? And because we do have really a kiasu culture, right? Potential hopefuls might say, I don't think I'm going to get certain number of votes, or I might lose my deposit, so maybe I shouldn't run, right? And of course, Mr. Tharman coming forward, right, may have killed a lot of people's, right? They will say, I'm not running anymore, right? So that's the question, right? Because there are no compelling reasons, as I see it, for people to want to run. in a presidential election, unlike a general election. You're comfortable and all, you don't want your life scrutinized, your family life scrutinized. Running in, Mr. Tama's life will be scrutinized, right? Mr. George Goh in some online spheres are really being closely examined. I've seen some of the very nasty messages and all.
Yeah, Eugene, to be fair to us who serve, we want to serve with our heart to the public. You to say something like, oh, you won't want to step forward because there's no benefit to it.
No,
I think that's very.
I'm talking about people whose considerations are governed by how well they can do. I'm not maligning people like you who walk the ground, who are concerned about issues, who take it up to the government, right? I'm not all maligning. I'm just saying that there will be people who will say I'm not going to run because I'm not going to win. That's what I'm saying. Right? Look, there's no reason to doubt the figures that 1,600 was in 2016. Right? The figure could have grown to 1,700 or even more. Right? And we can't even get 3 persons to say that they want to step forward.
But the criteria is set so high.
No, I think all you need is 2 to have an election.
500 million, how many people qualify?
No, they say 1,600 to in excess of 1,600, right? So,
Actually, I just want to say is that, until today, I still don't know why the counting starts on weekly. Okay, that's one thing. Second is that I think we must all face the reality of this presidential election in the sense that Ong Teng Cheong had clearly said that they gave him the key, but they changed the lock. Right? Okay. So I think we have to remember this. Ong Teng Cheong already said this, published in the Straits Times anyway. And third, I want to say is that I'm quite connected to the crowd, younger generations. Actually, they are praying that if there is an election, for the presidential election, what they are hoping is that, assuming that George is disqualified, so walk over. Actually, they are now hoping that election day can be Friday, so it's a long weekend. Alright, so yeah, that's my comparison.
Well, it's still early days, right? So we could have other people stepping forward, right? And hopefully, they will be automatic qualifiers. President Ong. Well, those remarks came towards the end of his term, right? And I think he was perhaps a bit, in my view, right, perhaps aggrieved that he couldn't get the support of the government for a second term.
Iris, may I just want?
But that's how I see it.
I want to know why President Ong wasn't given a state funeral.
I'm not
petty to me.
I'm not in a position.
Yeah, it seems very petty of the government not to give him a state funeral, right?
No, but state funerals are, to be fair, very rare.
But he's the president.
Well, Wee Kim Wee wasn't accorded a state funeral. Unless you die in office, right, you're probably not going to be accorded. Right, only state funerals were Goh Keng Swee, Rajaratnam, Lee Kuan Yew. Toh Chin Chye, I don't think so, right? Right. So again, I'm sure there's a criteria, right? And now whether the state I'm not able to comment.
Mr. Eugene, I have a question.
Call me Eugene.
If Diamond and George go against their eligibility, of course Diamond, who do you vote for?
Voting is secret, sir.
I need to see Mr. Goh's record.
Okay.
And I think it's important for Singaporeans not to look at labels, not to judge a book by its cover, right? And examine. And I would always, as I wrote in the commentary, right, that we should all give whoever's on the ballot sheet a fair hearing, right? Just because someone is from the PAP doesn't mean that he or she cannot do the job. Again, we're all entitled to our views. But I don't think it is a foregone conclusion.
Actually, I'm just kidding. We are echo chamber, so it's not fair because if I ask them who they will vote and say what they will say, George Goh. But with the public
I think they are pretty angry because the last PE they were denied of a voting right? And now we have a very good candidate, Indian versus a Chinese, intellect versus a not so intellect, a man with a heart and a man with a brains, right? You get one. And I have been talking to very close friends, and my daughters. I asked them because they have been following me, George goes, what you call it, clips, and they keep telling me they want to vote for it. I said, please. I mean, now you all have your voting rights, but imagine that being Indians, they are saying this to me. You know that the father doesn't like him. But I also have spoken to my many other Indian friends.
You have raised them well. You have raised your daughters well.
Okay. So my question is isn't the government not worried that because even with the first election, okay, who Ong Teng Cheong was also a Chinese, of course Chua Kim Yeow nobody knows that, right? And he still managed to get 41 without campaigning, no social media, no strong opposition parties there.
But Logan, he used one powerful statement: if you don't want a PAP president, vote for me.
Yeah. Okay. So then after that came the last one. Okay, with Dr. Tan. I mean when Tony Tan also DPM. Right? And because of the 4 contests, then he only managed to get 35% versus the other 3 65%. So aren't the PAP not scared on this? Thanks.
You have to ask them. I have no idea about their thought processes. But no, I think they'll be worried if voters see it as a referendum in them. And I don't think that's the right platform. Just wait a while more because the general election will be up next, right? I think we shouldn't cut your nose to spite your face, Yeah. So know what each election is about, and then decide who you think deserves your vote. Like give everyone a fair hearing. Like don't use the presidential election, to mount a protest. You will have your say. I think the general election should be earliest second half of 2024. Akan datang. Coming very soon really.
Okay, because I've been told by the management here that we're coming very close to the end of the time that we have here, right? So please be very short, right? And then I'm going to back it up.
Now, my question, right? Or rather, my comments follow my question. I think more and more Singaporeans are getting fed up. Okay, cost of living. They don't even care, about raising GST. Even essential goods, they should avoid taxing on GST on essential goods, housing and things like that. Now, we have seen how vindictive the government can be, right? There are many issues. I shall not go into details. I mean, even the MPs or ministers are supposed to be morally upright, and yet we have seen a minister who went into adultery.
I don't do get sued here. We're all here to.
What's your question?
Okay. So
I just want you. I'm a lawyer by training, so I said just yeah.
Now, my point is that that we should use this opportunity for the presidential election to show to the government that hey, the people are fed up, so hence your comments.
No, I just said I think we should. If unhappy with the government, use the general election. Right, the presidential election is a different contest altogether. That's my view. Okay. But of course, people are entitled to see the elections in the way that they want to. Right? But hopefully, they will recognize that the two elections are actually quite different creatures altogether.
Okay, I want to wrap it up.